ever since Mike McCarthy got to Dallas, he's a big believer in you build through the draft, you reward your own, you don't thrive on free agency. Wants to be more balanced than they were for a long time in Green Bay, where Ted Thompson, the late, great Ted Thompson, basically eschewed free agency entirely, other than a few spot signings here and there, Charles Woodson. There were years would go by, and they wouldn't sign a single unrestricted free agent because of the comp pick formula, because they wanted to reward their own guys. Mike wants balance, but he wants to build through the draft. For them to execute 2 significant trades in one offseason and not give up that much, I think was really important for them. To bring in Stephon Gilmore, who's still playing at a high level, he wanted to get to a place that he had an opportunity to win, burnish his legacy, show that he can still perform at a high level. The Colts are going to be in transition. Chris Ballard was willing to work with Gilmore. Trades him to Dallas for, I believe it was a 5th-round comp pick. You now have him opposite Trayvon Diggs. You get Brandon Cooks, also on the cheap, who you now are able to plug into a really talented wide receiver core where you hope Michael Gallup is a year better now that he's a year further removed from the ACL. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is a really good young player. He'd be the talked-about guy in that draft class if Justin Jefferson weren't also in that draft class. And they've got talent in the backfield. Zeke's gone. It's going to be more Tony Pollard. They like the young kid that they drafted out of Kansas. Deuce Vaughn. One of the great stories of that draft. And with Dak, you're hoping that, he avoids some of the injury hiccups that they had last year through the course of camp. And then obviously he gets hurt right at the start of the season and misses time. They won a bunch of games with Cooper Rush last year. Mike McCarthy should have been a Coach of the Year candidate last year instead of having to hear the annual calls for they should fire him and go after Sean Payton and the other nonsense. No, I think the Cowboys are in a great position. They're in a challenging division. I said it yesterday, and you guys immediately jumped on me that they may have the most talented roster in the NFC East. That's taking nothing away from the Eagles. But the Cowboys are a very talented team. They got a really good D coordinator in Dan Quinn. It's going to be Mike McCarthy's offense this time around. Mike, as a play caller, is one of the best in the NFL. He's got the track record to show that. Regardless of who the quarterbacks have been, you look at the productivity, you look at the games that they've won, you look at the number of different pieces that came through Green Bay over the years, Mike knows how to call a game. And he's still been doing it. Mike would still show up at the stadium way early. He doesn't wasn't doing the full thing with his play sheet and whatnot, but he was still going through and doing it like he was a play caller, thinking through different things. He'd show up at the stadium 6 hours before kickoff because he wanted to go through it. Now he's back into actually doing this and having this be his offense, the way he wants it to run. They're not flipping the terminology because they want to keep things simplistic for Dak. But I have every reason to believe that this is going to be a really good Dallas Cowboys team. They'll have the same pressure that they always do because everybody talks about them. Yeah. Whether you're talking about them because you like them or whether you're talking about them because why are we talking about them? Stop talking about the Cowboys.
I feel that way a lot of times, Tom, by the way. But, my thing is, I like Tony Pollard. I think he's done well. But 5 months after, breaking his leg, I'm just wondering, man, how that's going to translate. Is he going to be ready? And then when you see a back of Dalvin Cook's caliber who's out there looking for a job, I'm like, every year Jerry Jones talks about wanting to win a Super Bowl and like wanting to remake a deal with the Lord that he made back in 1992. If you're really serious and you've got a Dalvin Cook out there and you've got a starting back who is coming off of a pretty severely snapped leg, in my opinion, you got to roll the dice, man. You got to throw them on the table, bring Dalvin Cook in.
The issue with Dalvin, it's going to be the money.
But the
Cowboys have a lot of resources out there. They've got young guys they want to take care of. I don't see that being a fit. I mean, I think it makes perfect logical sense, but they drafted Deuce Vaughn for a reason. They do like Pollard. They are optimistic in terms of his recovery. He's going to be good to go. They haven't been afraid to pay people coming off major injuries either. They paid Gallup last year. Obviously, he was not quite all the way back when he got back. They paid Dak.
Which is why I'm a little worried about Pollard because it seems now that these guys come back from injury, it seems like it's going to take a full season to recover. So,
I think that there's a much higher percentage chance, and I'm not saying this because anyone has told me this, but I would say, logically speaking, there's a much higher percentage chance they're signing one of the other running backs that are out there. Dalvin's simply going to be the most expensive. He's going to have the most competition for his services. There's other guys like Leonard Fournette, who we had on the show yesterday, Kareem Hunt. There's other guys who are sitting out on the market right now that I think probably have a better chance to end up being the fit for Dallas just because the price point's going to be different.
Okay, but would you agree or disagree that maybe looking at bringing in one of those guys might not
really want the Cowboys to sign a running back, don't you, TJ?
I just, like I said, I like Pollard, but coming off that injury, I don't know what he's going to look like. No one really knows what he's going to look like. And I pray, obviously, that he turns into the guy that we all hope he can be, but I just don't know.
I mean, listen, there's always running backs sitting out there. There's always running backs every year. I mean, look at the guys who have signed off the street. Like Latavius Murray, 2 or 3 years in a row, was just sitting out there, didn't have a job, and then he comes out and runs for 100 yards for somebody. He's currently under contract with the Bills because he had a pretty good season once he landed in Denver last year after they signed him off the Saints practice squad where he had just had a 100-yard rushing game for a different team.
Well, Tom, now, not to interrupt, but now going back to our conversation that we've had, is that the reason why this running back position seems to be undervalued now? Because you just got done saying there's so many of them sitting out there. So is that why?
That's part of it. And there's a volume of running backs in the draft every year. This was a pretty good running back draft. You can get those guys on cost control deals early on. Even where Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson were drafted, you're still paying half what Christian McCaffrey's getting by drafting those guys up there. It's resources. It's a high draft pick, but absolutely. That depresses some of the market. And the fact that there are those veterans. I mean, there's guys who are coming in on minimum deals, or in Murray's case last year, a practice squad deal with the Saints, and he comes out and he's a savvy vet, and he can still run, and he can come out and he can give you the productivity. So Dalvin Cook, in my mind, is the one who's in a different category because he is a difference maker, because he is consistent, because he can do a lot of different things for you. That's why he's the one who's going to get money out in the free agent market. Gotcha. The other names that are sitting out there right now, I think are going to have a harder time. Somebody's going to offer Leonard Fournette some money.
Still good players out there. You're right, though.
Right. Yeah. Kareem Hunt, somebody's going to sign him at some point here, but it's probably not going to be at the absolute top of the market because it's June 14th, and that money in that market went away back in March, absent a really rare opportunity. I mean, how many times have you had a 4-time Pro Bowl player, guys made the last 4 Pro Bowls, come off 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, is a free agent in June? It's the biggest it gets for NFL free agent stories at this time of year. That one's just in a different category. Everybody else right now who's sitting out there, they're sitting out there because they haven't gotten their number yet. And that number, generally speaking, sometimes there's injuries and sometimes you can wait and that's going to be fortuitous for you. But generally speaking, if you haven't gotten your number by now, that number's not coming. And you eventually have to decide, am I going to wait for an injury? Am I just going to sit and conserve my body and wait till somebody gives me that number because they are in a bind? Or do I take the best offer I can get, the best fit I can get, and try to do better next time around?
All right, well, thanks, Tom. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I appreciate you.
That was quite the... you had 3 questions, and they were all about signing a running back.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.